must be the greatest. I told the world, I thought the God ever gave. The best ever.
Welcome to the DL Boxing Podcast. I am your host, Coach D, along with co-host neighborhood hero Ryan Rios and Bad Chaz, where we talk about the sport you and I love, boxing. Well, guys, welcome to episode 30. Boy, am I excited about this one. How are you guys doing, man?
Excellent, man. Great to see you guys again.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, we have a special guest today, man. Yes, I think a lot of, if any pro boxers, amateur boxers watch our show, I think they'll be interested in our special guest, right?
Yeah.
Let me introduce him. Working out of the Zoom corner, hailing from Washington, D.C., he is the founder of Neuro Movement. Ladies and gentlemen, Reza Mofarrahi.
Welcome.
What's up, Reza?
That's awesome. That's probably the best intro of any podcast I've ever seen.
Hey, thank you, Reza, for making the time out to be on the DL Boxing Podcast. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, you got it, man. Well, Reza, tell us all about yourself, man. What influence did you encounter growing up that has ultimately led you to where you are today with Neuro Movement, man?
Yeah, so started the company maybe like 5 years ago, but I've been doing this type of training for over 10 years. It all started, when I was in college. I went to University of Maryland, graduated with a bachelor's degree in kinesiology. The game plan was never to work with pro athletes. I always planned on working with kids with disabilities, kids with neuromuscular disorders. So the last year that I was in college, I took a lot of neuro classes revolving around the neurology of movement. Found those super fascinating. And read a lot of research articles, kind of learn as much as I could as I finished up my last year of college. Got out of school, was planning on applying to physical therapy school, started working with kids with special needs, and just working on fitness with them, kind of getting them, trying to move better, so they could play, more freely with their, classmates and people, their friends on the playground. That was mainly the goal, right? But what I started seeing was that, movement is more of a 3-step process rather than one step. So when you go to the gym and work with a trainer, they just work on the movement aspect, right? But they don't look at all the other things that kind of go into that movement, which is the stimulus that you're receiving. Could be auditory, visual, tactile, right? Then you process that information and then you execute the movement, right? So with the kids with neuromuscular disorders, there's always something wrong at one of those steps, and kind of break down those steps and try to change things around. So I started developing these new methods revolving around research that I read in college and things that I came across, and started getting really good results. Kids were moving better, processing information faster. And then one day, a pro athlete comes in the gym, and he ended up being a boxer. So I was the only one that had some kind of combat sport knowledge in the gym at the time. Nobody else really knew anything about combat sports. I did a little MMA, mostly jiu-jitsu stuff, but not a lot of boxing, to be honest. And this was about, let's see, maybe a little over 10 years ago. So I started doing some stuff with him. I realized, that there's a million strength and conditioning coaches out there. So I was there's no point in doing strength and conditioning with him. I don't know anything about boxing, so I'm not going to work on his technique and screw something up. So I was hey, I can train your nervous system. I can make you react faster. I can make you make decisions quicker. And, we kind of go from there. The boxer that I was working with was named Antoine Douglas. He used to fight on Showtime a lot back then. He was an up-and-coming prospect. And so he was kind of the template for all the stuff that I was doing. He was yeah, I'm going to bring my coach in and have him check it out. I was all right, cool. So he liked it. He brought his coach the next day. His coach came in, really quiet guy, was just kind of standing, watching everything I was doing, didn't say anything. So I was this dude's either going to think I'm a complete lunatic or he's gonna like this stuff. The coach ended up being Coach K from the U.S. Olympic boxing team. So Coach K Koroma. He liked it a lot. He's yeah, I'm gonna send him my other fighters to you. So I started working with some of the other guys he was with. John Thompson was one. He ended up fighting for a world title fight. Jerry Odom was another guy fighting on Showtime, and Shakur Stevenson was one of the kids that was showing up every time. Just to work on his reaction time and distance management and processing distance and stuff. So we were working on a lot of those things. I didn't think he would end up blowing up at the time. And, he was, this was pre-Olympic Shakur. So I got to work with all those guys and kind of start building the foundation for what I'm doing with boxers now. A lot of stuff that I did then, I probably wouldn't do today. Some of it was like, trial and error type stuff. But over the last 10 years, I honed it in, kind of perfected the art of training, like reaction time. And I always tell fighters and athletes. So I work with a lot of boxers because that's what we started with. But I'm currently working with like WNBA players, NBA, UFC fighters. We had our first Formula One driver. I was in talks with the Dodgers to do off-season training, but then the lockout happened. So I work with like everything, like Wall Street guys, anything that revolves around like making quick decisions or any kind of performance really. But we have such a heavy footprint in boxing because that's kind of like what I started with. But yeah, so I always tell like athletes that, you go work on your hardware every day, right? I'm not there to work on your hardware. I'm there to work on your software. So it's like bringing your phone to me and then I'm updating the apps so that everything runs smoothly. And then, yeah, over time, I started seeing like patterns in like when it came to reaction time and performance. So some fighters that were like nationally ranked or pros, I saw they had like a certain reaction time in certain areas, right? And there's like a common thread. And then like when I got a chance to, test out some of the world champions, and some of the world champions that I worked with was or tested out, Clarissa Shields, Kayla Plant. I did camp with Gervonta Davis. So I got to see like where they were at, and without me doing any work with them, they were significantly faster in terms of reaction time than the average fighter. So then I kind of got like a baseline of what a world champion is at and where their reaction time is on their punches and how fast they're able to respond and make decisions versus like every other fighter out there. And I started realizing that's one of the big differentiators between a guy who's like in the top 10 and the guy who's not. And so now I kind of strive to like get them to a certain point. And what I found in the last 2 years, if I get a fighter's reaction time down to a certain number, their success rate shoots up, and we haven't lost. Like any fighter that I've gone down to that number has won their fight. And if you think about it, it makes sense because let's say you have 1 second, right, to throw a punch, and I have a second to throw a punch, right? If I can fit in and respond with my reaction time is, let's say 0.5, right? That means I can fit 2 punches in that 1 second. If your reaction time is 0.7, right, you're only going to get 1 punch in because by the time you get that 1 punch out at 0.7 seconds, you only have 0.3 seconds to get your second punch off, right? So I start finding like if I get the fighter's reaction time down and faster, they can fit more punches in that amount of time. So that's what I deal with. I deal with time with athletes. I guarantee fighters that I'll give them more time in each split second. And yeah, that's kind of pretty much the gist of like what I do in a quick summary.
Yeah, that is very fascinating, exciting stuff. Reza, so you have neural movement, and of course your mantra is training the nervous system through fitness, right? So of course we cover the sport of boxing, Reza. So can you tell us, talk about the regimen specifically for boxers, where you improve, where you can improve their overall skill set and, like you mentioned, the reaction time. So what is the specific regimen for boxers, say?
Yeah, so like let's say a fighter comes to me like, hey, I want to bring you into camp or something, right? I'm like, all right. So I don't mess with like strength and conditioning really. I don't mess with like their skill set, like their skills. Like I'm not like, all right, you need to put your hand here. You need to do this. I take what the fighter's style is already like, talk to the coaches. I'm like, hey, what areas do you want to see this fighter improving? And that's one thing I try to like clarify with everybody when I come in. I try to talk to the head coach as much as possible because I don't want to do anything that would like mess with what they're doing already or alter anything or create any habits that they don't want, right? So I'm very it's very important to kind of like know the fighter going in and see how they fight already, what their style's like, what their tendencies are, and differentiate like bad tendencies from good tendencies. And doing that by talking to coaches and the fighters themselves. So if I go into a camp, the first thing I'm mainly focused on is the jab. So I try to get the jab faster because everything comes off the jab. If the jab is faster, then all the other punches can come in faster. So I'll work on like getting the jab more accurate. I'll get work on them getting the jab faster, responding quicker. And then the thing that that I found over the course of like doing this over a couple of years is that you can have a fighter that has a really fast reaction time, right? And that reaction time could be like impressive. And then you have another fighter, then you put them in a situation, right, where they have to focus. Their reaction time will significantly slow down. So if a fighter can't maintain their reaction time while in the process of focusing, then that becomes a problem too. So I'll look at those things like how fast are you in processing different information? Like how fast are you in picking out targets? How fast are you when you have distractions? How fast are you when you have to remember things while you're in the process of like throwing your jab, right? And I found that like every fighter slows down by a certain amount. So that's the other thing I'll try to do is where I'll speed up their reaction time, but also speed up their reaction time while processing information. And if you take all the data, right, and you graph it next to each other, it's pretty cool because you'll see like the graph for reaction time is kind of like all over the place, but slowly going down because they're getting faster. And then you have the graph for the reaction time when processing information. It'll be a little bit higher because they're a little slower, right? They'll be all over the place. But slowly as the camp goes on, they'll start to converge and they'll match up. And when we get that matchup, then I know, all right, you're processing information just as quick and you're able to react, at equal speed. And I always use the example of like Lomachenko, right? When a fighter fights Lomachenko, he could be really fast, but Lomachenko overwhelms them with like information. So it makes them look slow, right? Because he's changing angles, he's giving different reads, switching things up on them constantly. So then it just looks like they're stuck in the mud. And you're like, why isn't this dude moving? Because he's trying to process, a lot of information. And then so they slow down. So I always give that example. It's like somebody's giving you a lot of to process. I want you to be able to maintain your speed, even in that sense. Yeah. So that's kind of like, work on those type of things and like anything else that revolves around the nervous system.
Yeah, that's exciting, Reza. And like I said, if any of our viewers are boxers, I hope they look into this neural movement training because it sure does seem to help them out, and it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? If you can throw 2 punches in 1 second while your opponent can only throw 1, then you got the upper hand.
Yes,
that's very awesome, Reza. I'm gonna turn it over to neighborhood hero Ryan Rios for some questions.
Hey, what's up, Reza? Man, I love everything I'm hearing, man. This is awesome, But while you were talking, I have a question. We all know like fighters struggle to make weight. Is there any cognitive concerns, after a fighter makes weight, as far as just their reaction time, their attention to detail? I mean, the list goes on and on. Do you have any concerns, like when that scenario happens, when a fighter's struggling to make weight?
Yeah, definitely. I take this stuff like really serious because obviously people die in boxing. It's a unique sport where, you literally, putting your life on the line. So the weight cut management, obviously that's like the nutritionist's job and their responsibility to make sure that they're doing it the right way so that they're not in that zone of jeopardy, But yeah, dehydration affects reaction time. Because you need that fluid, right, to conduct response times and stuff, right, electricity, right. So if you're dehydrated, it makes your nerves unable to like respond as fast. Your brain isn't working as well. You're fatigued, right. Fatigue is the biggest has the biggest impact on reaction time. So all those things play into it. What I found is that if they're going through a rough patch, right, which I hope they wouldn't be going through when it comes to the weight cut, but if they're going through a rough patch, if their reaction time gets down to a certain point, right, and then I can see their reaction time starts slowing down because of that weight cut and they're struggling, that becomes kind of like not a concern for me because I know as soon as they rehydrate, that reaction time all of a sudden will speed back up again. So it adapts to like how their body is. I just try to make sure that like they're taking, getting enough sleep, the night before the fight or leading up to the fight, because that, like I said, that has the biggest impact on their reaction time. In terms of like the neural aspect, I think that's why the weight cut's really important for nutritionists to handle properly, because if you don't have enough fluid in your head and you're fully dehydrated, that's all that's protecting your brain from getting rattled around on impact, right? So, those are definitely huge concerns. And then being able to react and respond and evade punches, that's a big thing too. So the more I can get them to see and visually process, that's another thing we work on is visual processing. The more I know that they have more tools to evade punches and avoid, taking more damage.
Yeah, well said. Another question that I have is that, you fix the fighter software and not so much their hardware, but I don't know where this falls under, and that's heart and toughness. And, some fighters have it, some fighters don't, but how can you reprogram somebody to just, go that extra round or, just dig deep? I mean, is there anything you're working on with building that mental toughness?
Yeah, I think toughness comes from a couple things. That's a tough thing to work on, because it is a lot of different factors that fall into the fighter's personality, right? So if their personality is a certain way, there's some things you can't fix, right? It's just that's the person that they are. So you gotta give them as many tools as you can to work around that toughness. So being able to maintain focus is something that I can work on with them, right? So that if they're going through like a tough round or going against a tough opponent, they're trying to get them to quit, right? The opponent's trying to get them to quit, to give them the mental fortitude to just stay focused, right? So that's kind of like something I'll try to counterbalance. But when it comes to like mental toughness, I think personality plays a big part into it, life experiences, right? The type of sparring they have leading up to the fight. If they're not getting tough sparring, then they may not feel tested, right, or feel confident going in. So I think there's a lot of different factors that come into mental toughness. That's a whole nother realm that you could do like a whole podcast on itself, right? I think a lot of that it gets pulled from a lot of different areas.
Yeah. And you know what? There's so many supplements going around right now, and they all promote, mental focus, longer, activity. Are there any supplements that you would suggest to help you perform better?
Personally, like I don't look into that stuff too much, just because there's a lot of like misinformation around. I don't know like the effects, like 100% how it affects like one person, especially when you're doing like a weight cut and stuff, how that affects the body. Because a lot of those mental like fortitude pills or whatever, they're just geared towards like the general public, and we're not working with general people, right? These are like elite level athletes. So I try to stay away from it. I try to stay with the things that I know work, and stick with that. But yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know any of those. From what whenever I talk to someone about things that, in terms of like this type of training, right, which is kind of like cutting edge, nobody really knows too much about it. There's like 3 ways to know if something is like BS or not, when it comes to like training. One is, can I collect data on it? If I can't show you data, then how do you know like what's going on, right? 2, can I progress that data, right? So let's say you get really good at something. Can I make it harder for you? If I can't progress it, then it's BS. This is one trick pony, right? And then 3 is it skill specific, right? Like, you can play video games all day and get really fast reaction time. Doesn't mean I could dodge a punch, right? So the movement has to be specific to that neural aspect that you're training, right? That movement has to be. That's why I call the company Neural Movement, because they go hand in hand with each other. So I think the same thing with like the supplements too, right? It's like, all right, how does this supplement work? Who has it worked with? That's kind of like how I would approach it. What's the data on it? Does it work with just and outside of general people? What's the data on like elite level athletes? There's a completely different like scenario. So
Yeah.
And then how can you measure, like if that supplement is supposed to help with cognitive function, does that help with cognitive function in boxing? Or does it just like help me just focus and read a book better? There's a lot of different. That's the dangerous thing of like looking into like mental training, because it's such a broad umbrella. And so I can say like, that improves your focus, right? Well, focus. How do you know? Like focus on what, you know? But when I work with the fighters, I'm like, I'm gonna improve your focus on the jab. I'm gonna improve your focus in this situation, right? So there's specific scenarios that I'm looking at.
Yeah, makes total sense. Thanks, Reza. Again, I'm going to pass it over to Bad Chaz.
Hey, Reza, I had a question in regards to, training the mind and the brain in comparison to, training the muscular system, when it comes in to play as far as recovery or showing actual success in it. What's the benefits of, exercising the brain in terms of recovery and how long it takes to actually show results in comparison to like working out the muscular system?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love working on the nervous system because unlike the muscular system, so the muscular system takes 3 to 4 weeks to see changes in like strength, power, flexibility. It takes some time. Nervous system is a fast responding system. It adapts really quickly. So I can show results like in the session. So like while the boxer is like training, I can show you like, hey, you're getting faster, or hey, look, your time's coming down each time, right? And so that's the good thing about like me going into a camp. I don't need to spend a lot of time with a boxer to get results. Like some camps I'll go on like pre-camp, just get them used to the training so they know what we're doing. It's not like, because like some of the stuff we do is like really unorthodox, like it's not your typical type training, right? And the equipment that we use is unique. And then I'll come in like, maybe near the end, the last 2 weeks, and then I'll get them faster. Some guys I work with like on an ongoing basis and they get super fast, right? But I don't need a lot of time. You don't need a lot of time to train the nervous system to get like results quickly. So that's the good thing about it. I think there's a second part to your question too, but
oh no, I was just kind of wondering, like, what are some of like the fastest results you've actually seen? Like within hours, like within days.
Yeah, within days. I've gone to like sometimes I'll be in town for one camp and then like another fighter will hit me up and they want to do some work and I'll get them faster in like 3-4 days. So
nice.
Like if I'm working on one specific thing, I can get faster in like 3-4 days minimum. That's the fastest I've gotten. Like, yeah. And I'm talking like significant results, not like just like a little thing. Some of it sometimes it's just like a lot of guys when they're trying to process information, you put them in a situation and try to respond quick, they add a lot of extra movement. Right. So they'll like cycle their hands, or a lot of guys when they're throwing the jab, they'll pull it back for a split second and then throw it forward. And all those things end up costing them, like I said, like if you're dealing with 1 second, right, you're losing out on time with that,
Yeah, that's great information. And I still think that there's the fighters deserve, the other types of training, that this is just a piece of the puzzle, that they can kind of incorporate into their camp and stuff that, would just kind of polish them off and just kind of make sure that they're all completely well-rounded and sent off well. The next question I had was, you were talking about increasing the jab. You kind of primarily focus on increasing the jab. Do you ever focus on any of the professional boxers' rear hand, their cross? And who are some of those fighters that you've got to work with that you can actually explain to us that you've seen the results?
I've seen results with like every fighter that I've worked with. There's a couple that I've been working with like on an ongoing basis because a lot of the fighters that I worked with, like I'll go into a camp, I don't get to spend a lot of time with them, right? So I'll just work on something specific. So there's a couple of fighters that I wanted to work with to see like how fast I can get them, and like how that would impact them like moving forward, right? So I want to see like if I take a kid from like the amateur level and start working with them, and see like, all right, let's see how great they can get. So I'm working with a couple guys right now, but one specifically, he's going to go pro this year, I believe. He just won 2 national titles this year. His name is Nasheed Smith. And I've been working with him for 2 years, and we did a lot of work together. And currently, he has the fastest reaction time of any fighter in the world. Like I would confidently say his reaction time is faster than any fighter in the world. And that's I've seen the reaction times on the jab and other punches with like Caleb Plant and Gervonta. I knew what those numbers were, so I made sure I got him faster than like all those numbers. So I'm excited to see like where his career goes and like how he does, because when he's in the ring, like some of the stuff I see him do is just pretty amazing. He's kind of like under the radar now, so a lot of people don't know about him. But yeah, in terms of like results, if you're talking about the rear hand, so a lot of times what I'll see with guys like boxers is when they're trying to react with the rear hand, right? they'll try to rush it, and you'll see a lot in fights. Like they'll throw that rear hand real fast, they'll react fast, and then they don't get the knockout because they're throwing an arm punch. So they'll trade off speed, without and compensate or give up mechanics, right? In that split second of making that decision, I need to throw that right hand, right? So they don't throw it with the hip. So a lot of times when I'm getting guys to train that reaction time with the rear hand, I'm not working on like their reaction time from the hand. I'm working on a reaction time from the hip. And then I have ways to kind of like look to see like, are they reacting with the hip or are they reacting with the hand? And if I see the numbers are a certain way, then I'm like, all right, they're reacting with the hip now. And a lot of it has to do with being able to see that, because if you think about it, the rear hand, right, should never win a race with the lead hand, right? But if I'm training it, right, if I can get the rear hand as fast as lead hand, that tells me that they're reacting with their hip. Because if you think about it, if you're rotating with your hip, now they come to the same spot, right? It's cut that as the hip rotates, that distance gets covered where the lead hand is already in place, right? So that's why it's really important to be able to react with the hip and not throw like an arm punch. You can still get the rear hand faster, but with power, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's some great info. Thank you very much for sharing all that information with us. I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to my colleague.
Reza, great information. So let's say I'm an athlete or just someone that wants to improve my my neural movement, right? Talk us through how I get in contact with you guys or how that process
check
works.
Out the Instagram page at Neural Movement, neural common spelling, NEURALMOVEMENT. A lot of people think it's neutral movement. A lot of the old school coaches, it drives me nuts when they're like, "Oh, neutral movement." I'm like, no, it's neural, right? So neural movement. We have a website too at neural-movement.com. You can contact us directly through any of those, and we're on TikTok too. So if anybody ever wants to reach out, and I'm trying to work on a certification too. That's one of my big goals, is creating like a certification for boxing for training reaction time in athletes. So there's other coaches out there and they're trying to like see how to like implement these like principles into their training regimen. Like what are the correct ways that I found, over the years. So hopefully that'll be coming out soon too.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Reza. Any last words for people watching the podcast and all the boxing fans around the world?
Yeah, definitely tune in. Like, these guys are awesome. They have the best intro of any podcast I've ever seen. But yeah, definitely, tune in, check them out, and make sure to catch Isaac April 1st on Top Rank on ESPN. So hopefully come away with that W that fight.
100%. Thank you so much, Reza. And with that, we'll sign off. You have a great night, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Reza. Have a good evening, man.
All right, guys, well, it's time to recap the fights that happened last weekend. The DAZN card out of Long Beach, California, guys. And in the undercard, we had Eric Tudor earn a unanimous decision in 8 rounds over Damoni Cato-Cain. Quite possibly the fight of the night, right? It was 2 undefeated prospects meeting each other early in their career, and Eric Tudor had the edge and ended up winning the unanimous decision. Neighborhood hero Ryan Rios. We met Damoni Cato-Cain in Long Beach. Great kid, right? Very welcoming. We did the interview with him. How'd you see that fight, man?
You know what, man, dude, it was a good fight. It was back and forth. And after meeting Cato-Cain, man, he was just an awesome dude, man. And even though we interviewed him, he was still around and he still hung out. And he was just real humble to be there. And I just was like, man, I'm really excited to see what he does. And man, I want to say he put on a great performance. But at the same time, that other guy was like the favorite.
Yeah.
And he hung with him. So I can't call that one. It was unanimous, but I want to say it could have been a split decision or even a draw in my book.
Yeah, well said, man. Yeah, the scorecards were a little wide, like I had mentioned. I thought the fight was a lot closer. Yeah. And well said, man. It could have been a split decision, draw, but it was definitely a closer fight than the scorecards would indicate. Bad Chaz, Cato-Cain ended up delivering, a headbutt to Tudor around round 4, and that kind of woke up Tudor. Where he actually showed more of his offensive skills, and maybe that's kind of where the fight tilted to his favor. Bad Chaz, is that what you saw, or how'd you see that fight, man?
Yeah. It was around the 4th round. Tudor got a headbutt, but It's just nice to see when you get a prospect recover and respond the way that he did after that head injury.
Right,
he turned it up and he put the pedal to the metal, man. And I don't know if he was just thinking to himself like, man, I better get off on this guy or he's going to win this round, and I'm going to get blood in my eye and I'm not going to be able to see. Yeah. But he rose to the occasion. Nonetheless, I give Cato-Cain a mad respect because he was a really humble dude when we met him, and he put on a great fight that night. It was probably the best fight that DAZN had that night. I think it was very competitive and closely matched, and it's just not too often where you get prospects that meet up like that in their career at that stage. And hats off to both of them.
Yeah, well said, Bad Chaz. Congratulations to Eric Tudor on your victory. All right, guys, let's move along to the main event. Well, it got upgraded or elevated to the main event because that is, in case you did not know by now, Zurdo Ramirez came overweight or did not make weight for his fight against Gabe Rosado. So the fight fell apart. I know we were there, and when the announcer announced that to us, we were like, it took out the air out of everybody.
Yeah.
Like, we were like, what? So unfortunately, that main event fell through, and so Mercito Gesta and Jojo Diaz Jr. was elevated to the main event. Pretty good scrap. By the way, we met Jojo and interviewed him there. Great guy, both of them, Mercito and Jojo. Yeah. They were so kind to the media, very down-to-earth people, and so we thank them for that, man, making that trip. Very nice, to meet them. Bad Chaz, what'd you think of the fight, man? A lot of people feel Jojo Diaz should have won. A lot of people feel, well, no, Mercito did enough to win. But the actual decision was Mercito Gesta split decision over 10 rounds. How did you see it, man? What was your opinion?
You know what? I've watched that fight for a second time. I watched it the night of, and then the second time, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, man, what did the judges see, to kind of lean that direction? Because, if you watch the entire fight, you kind of see it. It's pretty neck and neck. However, the beginning of that fight, I felt like Jojo, he wasn't as busy as his opponent. And he didn't do too well in the middle of the ring. Jojo did good whenever he had his opponent up on the ropes. And that wasn't very often. But you know what? At the end, I'd probably give Jojo, maybe 2 or 3 of those rounds at the tail end of the fight. But yeah, I was just really close. That's just unfortunate, that's the way it plays out when it goes to the judges. But his opponent looked busier.
Yeah, and I agree. A lot of people saying, it was a robbery, but I don't think it was anything close to a robbery, really. In my opinion, I saw Mercito Gesta just get off a lot more than Jojo Diaz, in my opinion, with the jabs. He was jabbing 2 southpaws, he was jabbing to the head and the body as Jojo was coming forward. So really, it's when you judge the fight, it's kind of almost like, what style do you prefer? Do you prefer the movement and busier punches of Gesta, or do you like the come forward aggression and harder punches by Jojo Diaz? Neighborhood hero Ryan Rios, what did you prefer, or how did you see that?
You know what? I like the second one you said. I like the aggression, man, getting him against the ropes and just digging into the body and going for that knockout shot. But you know what? I rewatched the fight too, and you're right. Gesta, he got off more. He was busier. But a lot of those jabs just landed off the gloves. Yeah. Jojo didn't take much of a beating, and when he was able to get inside, he went inside and he delivered the more accurate blows, I felt, the more telling blows. Yeah. And at one point I felt like, man, he could have even stopped him. Right. But again, like you're saying, once it goes to the judges, man, you never know what you're gonna get, and it could go either way. And I wouldn't have been mad with a draw or Jojo winning, and I mean even Gesta winning. It was one of those fights, but the scorecards were just way off in my book, and I didn't understand why. But a good fight. I love Jojo, man. I'm always gonna support him, and now I'm looking forward to Gesta fighting, a bigger name too now.
Yeah, absolutely. This was scheduled for 12 rounds at first, but then it got reduced to 10 rounds. Do you think that played a factor in the fight, Bad Chaz?
Yeah, that's a good possibility. Maybe if it went 12 rounds, maybe it would have been a little more in favor of Jojo. Right, because he started to turn up at the end. He started to warm up late. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, also the corner, guys. Jojo's corner. I know in the few of the times where we were privy to seeing that corner through the DAZN cameras, Jojo would ask, I won that round, right? Mm-hmm. And the corner was like nonchalant, like, yeah, you did. But there was no urgency. I think if you're really looking at the fight, closely, you gotta say it's a close fight. You can't think that one's winning clearly, because that was not the case.
Right.
I would have liked to see his corner have a little bit of urgency, like, hey, Jojo, you got to turn it up. Throw more punches, right? Give it all you got. At least let him know that, hey, this is a close fight. But I got a sense it's like a toned down corner. It's like almost like a friend in the corner. Mm-hmm. And I think in these fights, when you need to win, when your career's on the line, you're coming off of 2 losses, you need a corner that's gonna be the leader, the main person in that corner, and get you revved up and let you know how it's really going in that ring. How do you see that, man?
You know what? Now that you're saying that, I agree, and I love Brick House, dude. I love what they're about. But with Jojo, he's already lost the last 2, and it was a very close fight. And he needed to dig deep, man. Yeah. He needed to have that grit and just go out there and just, feel like he was down on the scorecards. Right. But when you don't have somebody in your face and telling you that, you think you're smooth sailing. You know what I mean? And I feel like Jojo responds well to that criticism. Yeah. You tell Jojo something, he's gonna go out there and do it, dude. Jojo's a bulldog. And I just felt like if there was more sense of urgency, I think Jojo would have capitalized on a lot of those opportunities and went out there and tried to go for the knockout. If not, at least it would have looked impressive with the judges more. And yeah, I feel like he didn't get that. But again, I don't know if they had a game plan going in, and that's why Jojo went there, because he needed, just different scenery. Who knows? Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm just being a critic, but at the same time, like, I would have liked to see somebody getting on my face and telling me, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like, we're here for a reason. And I feel like Jojo didn't get that.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Bad Chaz, Jojo Diaz drops his 3rd fight in a row. This is his last fight with Golden Boy. He is now a free agent. Obviously, he's going back to the drawing board. What are some of the things that you hope that he does from this day on forward?
Oh, you know what, man? Just probably being a little more disciplined in camp. So when he comes in, and he steps on the scale, he's at that contracted weight. He's not going to be anything outside of that. Mm-hmm. That would be the first step, and then just kind of go from there and. Maybe just communicate with his coach and, just be a little more specific, round by round, what's actually going on, so that, he's not, finding this out, and watching it the next day after he lost. He could have easily been told, hey, just win the rounds, man. Don't be giving up any rounds. Yeah. Just to kind of give, just a little bit of a reference to where he's at, during the fight. So, other than that, I think that Jojo has a place in boxing. I think that he has power, and I think that it's there. He has all the components. I think that he has a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience for his age, and just a little tuning up. You know what I mean? Absolutely. A little refreshment, and I think that he'll be dialed back in.
Yeah, well said, guys. Like I said at the beginning, great guys, Mercito Gesta and Jojo Diaz, both warriors, and I'm sure they'll both be back. But congratulations to Mercito Gesta on your split decision victory. All right, guys, it's Fight Week. All right, guys, it's time to preview the fights that are coming up this weekend. And boy, do we have a big fight weekend, right, guys? Yeah. Let's start off with the top-ranked card out of Fresno, California, guys. And we'll kick it off with Raymond Muratalla versus Humberto Galindo over 10 rounds. Raymond Muratalla, 16-0, 13 KOs. Humberto Galindo, 14-2 with 1 draw, 11 knockouts. Hey, I think we're excited to see Raymond back in the ring, right? His last outing, neighborhood hero Ryan Rios, was against the Caveman out of Bakersfield. He gave him, tough opponent, gave him his first loss, looked good doing it. Mm-hmm. Do you expect to see more of the same?
Yeah, exactly the same, if not even quicker. I love Raymond, man. He's just a dog, too, out of RGBA. And, man, they have big things set for him. And, yeah, I think it's just another fight to where he can get to some of those bigger names. Yeah. He's going to be impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't wait to see that fight. Also on that card, guys, we have 2 undefeated women putting up their titles. And that I'm talking about Seniesa Estrada versus Tina Rupprecht. 10 rounds, guys. Seniesa Estrada is the WBA strawweight champion. Tina is the WBC strawweight champion. Bad Chaz, we're fans of Seniesa Estrada, and she's taking on another fellow undefeated champion. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I love watching Estrada fight, and I can't wait to see her fight this weekend. So I'm not real familiar with Tina, just yet. Just based on her record, you know what I mean. It's half the record that Estrada has, and looking at her height and just everything, I think that this is going to be Estrada's fight. You know, she's probably going to take her out maybe in the middle of the fight, maybe the sixth. We'll see. But I think this is going to be Estrada's winner.
Yeah, and the winner will become the unified strawweight champion. Again, we know that Senesa's goal is to become undisputed. So with the victory, she'll be on her way of doing that, okay? Cool. Excellent. Let's move on to the main event, which we have Jose Ramirez versus Richard Commey over 12 rounds in a WBC title eliminator. Neighborhood hero Ryan Rios. Jose Ramirez is back, man.
Yeah, he is.
It was quite a long layoff, right?
Yeah.
How do you see his fight going against Commey, man?
You know, I'm a big Jose Ramirez fan, man, and I was debating back and forth, should I go to the Caleb Plant, Benavidez, or Jose Ramirez Commey fight? And you know what? I'm going to go with the hometown hero. I'm going to be in Fresno. And, you know, Richard Commey is no joke. You know, he possesses power. He looked good against Pedraza, and, you know, Pedraza looked good against Ramirez. But I think Ramirez is going to be dialed in. I think he's hungry. I think he wants to go after Taylor again, or if Teofimo beats Taylor, he'll go after Teofimo.
Right. So
this is just a fight where Jose Ramirez is going to go in and say, I'm back. Give me a bigger name, and let's get this undisputed settled. Absolutely,
yeah. And Bad Chaz, Richard Commey, if there was any time, this is the perfect time to catch Jose Ramirez coming off a long layoff. What do you see Richard Commey trying to do in that ring to test Jose Ramirez?
Oh, you know what? Just probably the jab, the basics, and just really not really try to get in a phone booth with him, because Jose Ramirez, you know, he can throw some really mean body shots, and he knows how to work the inside.
Comes
very
forward,
well.
right? Yeah.
So it's not somebody that you probably want to stay in there on the inside with. You know, try to work him on the outside. But if he needs to work the inside, be ready, because that's where the war is going to start. But you know what? I think Jose Ramirez has the edge on this fight. He's going to be fighting in Fresno. Have you ever been to a Fresno fight when Jose's there, and it's all on his side? So you know, Commey's going to have that up against him that night.
Yeah, well said. So that is the main event on the top ranked card: Jose Ramirez versus Richard Commey. All right, guys, let's put our attention to the Showtime pay-per-view card on that same night. We have on the undercard a crossroads of a fight, guys. In the lightweight division, we have Chris Colbert versus Jose Rayo Valenzuela in a 10-rounder. Wow, what a fight, guys, because both of them coming off upset losses, and neither one of them can afford to lose, a second fight in a row. So, neighborhood hero Ryan Rios, who are you leaning towards in this fight, man?
This is a great fight, man. And again, it's a 50-50 fight.
Yep.
You know, you guys all know, I love the Benavidez camp, and Rayo's just a stud, but at the same time, man, I don't take anything away from Colbert.
Yeah.
You know, he was just that guy for New York, just to come out and just take over, the sport. But again, like, man, it's anybody's fight. I look Rayo to go in there and just look like a dog. You know what
make
I mean?
a statement, right?
Make a statement, but at the same time, Colbert's just that boxer, man. And
that
just
style.
The skills, dude, don't lie. So I'm going for Rayo on this one, and I say it's going to go to decision, and then Rayo's going to get the victory.
Yeah, Bad Chaz, both of them, like I said, coming off upset losses. Chris Colbert to Hector Garcia and Rayo Valenzuela to Dos Santos. Obviously, both didn't expect to lose. What in this fight are you looking? Which fighter do you think has more to prove coming into this fight?
Oh, that's a really hard question. I think that they're both coming in there hungry and trying to recover from their losses, from their upsets of 2022. The way I see this fight kind of playing out is I see Rayo. He kind of comes from a stable that's just that Mexican monster that come forward, just eat you and beat you up, man. And Chris Colbert, he just likes to look fancy and sharp. I see Rayo kind of pressing that fight, taking it to him, and I see Chris Colbert, trying to just be that perfect clean boxer and trying to put on this
Elusive
performance.
Boxer,
and if he's not careful, he's going to try to look too slick, and he might catch something in between that slickness. So, I think Rayo, as long as he doesn't get tested on his chin, you know what I mean, and can basically come to this fight and bring to this fight what he learned from his last fight and just be a little more defensively sound, I think Colbert's going to have his work cut out for him.
Yeah, I think whoever is mentally mentally there, recovered from that loss, I think will have the edge. Because like I said, this is a win-win fight. I mean, this is a must-win fight for either one of them. So it's an exciting fight, man. It's a supporting fight on that card, and we can't wait to watch that.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's focus on the main event. It seems like we've been talking about this one since it got announced a while back, and I'm talking about David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant. 12 rounds for the WBC interim title, guys. What can I say? David Benavidez, the Mexican monster, 26-0, 23 knockouts against Caleb Sweet Hands Plant, 22-1, 13 knockouts. They're both almost the same height. Benavidez 6'2", Plant 6'1". Benavidez has a slight reach advantage, about a half an inch. Talk about a 50-50 fight. For those that know, you got two fighters that are at the top of the level, and they just want to make that jump, to the next level to finally get a shot at Canelo. Neighborhood hero Ryan Rios, this is exciting, man. And how are you feeling right now as we are in fight week?
You know what? I like just the build up to the fight, man, because when there's like a grudge match, it makes it that more special. But these guys have skills, dude. You know what I mean? And they're both going out to make a statement. You know what I mean? And honestly, I feel like Caleb Plant has more to lose. He already lost to Canelo, and he looked good against Durrell. And so I feel like he has his back against the wall a little bit. And Benavidez, man, I feel like he's just so confident. He's just like everybody's calling him the Mexican monster, and that's the mentality he has, just to go in there and just go in there tough and just go guns blazing. You know what I mean? And honestly, I don't know if Caleb Plant can handle that much pressure, that much punishment. Caleb Plant definitely has to work the ring. He definitely has to box. And I remember his coach saying, no, we're not going to run from Benavidez. But if you don't, you're in a world for hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think Benavidez looks good. Again, I don't know if it's a knockout, but I see Benavidez winning. And I feel like, man, sky's the limit for him.
Yeah. Like you said, David Benavidez, this is the fight to prove all the hype, if you will. I know he's a two-time champion already. He's the youngest at super middleweight to become champion. So this is the fight that legitimizes his career thus far, and he's training like it. The guy's shredded, you know what I'm saying? He's looking good. But the X factor, I believe, in Caleb Plant's corner, Bad Chaz, is Stephen Breadman Edwards, who he brought in for the Durrell fight. I like that he's cool, calm, collective, and thinks straight. I'm sure he's telling Caleb Plant, hey, we have a hard task in front of us, but hey, even the bigger monsters in boxing history have been slayed. Such fighters as Big George Foreman, Mike Tyson, Thomas Hearns. So that kind of motivation and that he's instilling in Plant to say, hey, you can get this done. How do you see his role in that camp?
Oh, you know what? Plant? When I listen to Breadman Edwards, every time I listen to him and I hear him talk, man, it's just I'm a bigger and bigger fan.
Yeah,
he's just
cool.
accurate. He's real calm, like you said, poised, and just spits nothing but facts. And it seems like he's kind of just specifically dedicating himself to Plant for this fight. Where Benavidez, his coach, his dad, he has a handful of fighters. And, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that night, So looking at it, I can't really lean one direction with this fight. I feel like Plant, he has a really good defense and he can work the ring really well. And he has a good punch selection and a good IQ. But as far as power, though, he doesn't really display it. He displayed it with his Durrell fight. But, we're going to need to see a little more growth when it comes to fighting Benavidez. Benavidez has it. He comes forward. He's kind of flat on the feet, but he's just going to overwhelm him with punches and power. And just like anything, man, I just feel like that power over 12 rounds is just going to kind of diffuse just about anything you have to offer, unless you're going to meet that power with power. And I just hope that during his camp he was able to grow more in the power department. If not, I just think that Benavidez is going to ultimately kind of win.
Yeah, and I think Plant needs to be on point with his lateral movement and his defense. Right? I mean, sure, Benavidez can get off, but if he doesn't get off cleanly, that's to Plant's benefit, right? And you alluded to this earlier, neighborhood hero Ryan Rios. Power with power, but Plant needs to get his respect early. Yeah. And that is by hitting Benavidez and hurting him. You know what I'm saying? He needs to get his pound of flesh early, and that's that whole thing that we got to find out, how good is David Benavidez, right? We kind of had the gauge when Plant fought Canelo. He fought him pretty good, until his demise in the 11th round. So when you think about that, I was like, oh yeah, definitely, David Benavidez with his power is gonna stop him. But we got to take into the account styles, right? Styles make fights. Benavidez is not Canelo, and Canelo is not Benavidez. So this is the fight for Benavidez to prove his worth, right? And I agree. I mean, he throws punches from every angle. He loves to work the body. He has that power, and he has all the tools to wear down a Caleb Plant. But if Caleb Plant is able to not let him set, move around the ring, kind of turn him,
run from him.
Well, no, not really, not run from him.
Turn him,
hit him, turn him, and then put your hands up to block some of those hard shots to the head, and maybe not get hit to the body quite often. Then he has a chance to maybe pull off a decision. And who knows, man? We don't know how good David Benavidez' chin is. I mean, so far he's passed the test with every fighter he's fought. But those are the intangibles, right? And that's why we're gonna watch. These are two A level fighters, and boy, am I excited to watch, man. And may the best man win.
Exactly.
Tune in March 25th. David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant. All right, guys. Well, that concludes our podcast. I love the podcast, man. It was very exciting to have a Reza on. Never had heard of that type of training, but I'm glad we had him on for you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. Any shout outs that we want to give to anybody, guys?
Oh, you know what? Just shout out to Reza for coming on, making time for us, and putting us into your schedule, man. We really appreciate it. Anybody that comes on the show, shout out to all of our past fans that we've had. Thank you.
Absolutely. Neighborhood Hero Ramirez.
Yeah, fans, guests. I mean, even you guys for doing this, man. Like, this is a blast, and I really appreciate this. It gets me away from other stuff that I have going on, and it's just
for sure, man.
Just a great time, man. And I love it. Let's keep it going.
Well said, brother. Like I said, thank you, fans, for watching us, and please don't forget, if you haven't, subscribe. We also like to shout out sound guy Rob, cameraman Liam. Thank you guys for all your work. And well, guys, with that said, I am Coach D, along with co-host Neighborhood Hero Ryan Rios and Bad Chaz, and we're out, guys.